No problem. So I'll just do another intro again. Sorry. So I just want to say one thing is I just got off I left early, a fireside chat for Kernel Block 5, and Vitalik was the guest of this fireside chat. And one of the unexpected things was that he was asked, what do you think power is, and how do we understand power? So I thought it was actually fascinating because it was like right before this, he also shared his opinion about what power is and where it comes from. And so I thought, well, I had already planned this, but the opening question for our council today about power dynamics will be like, where does power come from? And then under there are just some questions to open up a discussion. Feel free to add questions that you think are relevant for people to reflect on and to be mindful of in the conversation that we have this hour. Is that good, Nate, Eduardo?
Yes, thank you so much. I think power for me, it could come from a social construction, a social dynamic that we assume or agree to. And power can come also from whatever we give value to, and whatever we assign value will they then have power over us, or we will have power over that, for me. And I think if I think about the TEC or most of maybe Web3 spaces, I think that power comes from sometimes what we thought about who has the knowledge and who is in a position of knowledge, and that unconsciously creates a system of power, and which is not a problem for me as long as these structures are we are aware of these structures and we are actively working towards taking down these structures and so on. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. I don't know who to pass on, so I will pass it back to you, Tam.
No problem. You're only the second to have gone, so I'll pass to Livia.
Thanks, Tam. I think power is the access to choice. The most choices we can make in the widest types of environments reflects how much power we have. And I think this gives this awareness of of class primarily, and of privilege. So yeah, I think understanding the difference, like not how many choices I have in comparison to someone, but how impactful my choices are in relation to someone else's choices. And then since we have a complex system with so many people and relationships involved, how does that map look like? What are the influence of the decision making that different people have and the reach of that? And I'll pass to Griff.
Man, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'll try to keep it short though. Power. So like there's power in physics, right? Power is in physics is pretty cool. I think this is the ideal of power. The idealistic version would be work over time. That's what power is classically, right? In physics and for like engineers. And so it's kind of a derivative of time versus work. I think that's super cool. Force and effort over a space for a given amount of time. That's the ideal of what power is, but that's not really what power is in cultural terms, of course. But I think that's what we want power to be. I really liked, speaking of Vitalik, he had a really cool blog post about legitimacy that came up in the praise debates. And I think in that blog post, he talks about like how legitimacy is acquired and what is legitimacy, and that I feel like a lot of it is analogous to power, right? So there's like legitimacy by brute force, like power by brute force. You know, you can just take power, right? Or you gain power and legitimacy via continuity if you've been doing it for a long time. Power also can be derived from a community via just being fair. Everyone has a voice. You can give power in a systemic way through fairness. There's power through process. I think that's kind of the same thing. You can like have we all have these tokens that have so much power. There's power through performance. You know, if you've been doing something for a long time and you have a history of doing it well, you know, it's a lot easier. For instance, I'm looking for someone who's going to help do curation, who's going to do curation systems. I want to give them the power to manage Giveth's curation system that we want to build. I'm totally down to give people power over that if they worked for Amazon managing the curation system that they built, right? That would be amazing. If it's just some community member, I probably wouldn't want to give them as much power because they don't have the history of performance. And then power through participation, being there. I feel like you can really legitimacy and power come hand in hand. And I love this article by Vitalik, which I can post in the Stewards chat. And I'll pass it to Zeptimus.
Thanks, Riff. Yeah, for me, the power is, as Livia also said, like the power of choice, the option to choice. And the most important thing, like, I think, I think, power doesn't have to be equal to everyone. Like, it's okay to have differences of power as long as it comes from, benefiting the commons. Who is benefiting more the commons in the long run it's fine to get more power. And I mean, for what I see in the TEC is like the two different, the two powers, like it's like social recognition and then, the amount of tokens you can have, like, so yeah, I mean, and both of, if those two fonts of power come from duocracy, I think that's great. And I don't have anything else to share. I'll pass it to Nate.
Very good. Pass it on to somebody else.
Wonka, maybe hasn't gone yet.
Yeah, I think that I had the time to think about this. So I would say that power are premises that build culture. So we are here because of the premises that we have had in the past, and some of there are legacies that we carry, and I think power are like the premises that build our understanding of reality, but coming from the past. Yeah, I think that maybe it's a little abstract, but I think that, and I think also that some different type of power that we're having in the TEC is that people that came after the hatch hasn't been able to vote, and even though that we have 7 months after the hatch, only still the hatchers and the buyers from the bonding curve are the only ones that can participate, and also the participation from those people should be promptly rewarded. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Because I think it's really important, and I feel like that's a place for the broader discussion.
Okay.
But maybe if we just go around, everyone has a chance to speak about where power comes from, and then we'll go around and everyone just takes their time. There's no time limits here, actually. But I wanted to sort of keep it focused on this one opening question and then move to the broader discussion.
Yeah, sorry. Then I will pass to Solcista.
I also just learned that power, where the word comes from. the ability to do things. And that certainly first and foremost comes from within. But also, since we're not islands, definitely the ability to do things is determined by the environment and structures, policies we put in place. So that's why people can feel powerless or empowered. But for example, in my worldview, power and power dynamics don't exist. It's quite interesting. I believe power comes from the mindset that is more about control, having power, property, ownership. That was also something like there are different worldviews, and I believe that, and I see or I live in those worlds where, and these are virtual worlds actually. So when I'm back in the real world, located in Munich, I know very well where power comes from. So just wanted to say that yeah, power is a concept, and if at all, it comes really from within. And in these worlds that we're building, we definitely have choice. So we should be building empowering structures, if at all. And I'll pass it on to Durgedas.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear.
Great. I think all social power is borrowed from the autonomy and agency of its participants. And I think that's an incredibly important structural point we often forget about, is that all social power is borrowed. So basically if we're talking about social power, it seems like a game of trying to convince a person to give up some portion of their autonomy and agency to sort of aggregate power in some way into the social fabric away from the individual's own autonomy and agency. So so from my view, social power is all sort of borrowed from the autonomy and agency of its participants. I'm not sure who's going next because I came a little late.
No problem. Mert hasn't gone yet.
I can go. So to me, power is ability to achieve the will. So it's very related to what Zepti and Livia said. So I think power dynamics are determined by someone's ability to achieve their will, even against resistance. So this may also, as we've said, this may come from social recognition, but also from crude force. For example, in TEC, stewards are like, let's say, leaders of the working groups. They have social recognition, so they have some other powers because they have some more will than some other ones, but it's coming from social recognition. But in some cases, this is coming from, let's say, scared society, etc. So that's my thoughts. So I would like to pass it to Craig.
Hey, Craig, if you are in a good place where you can speak, the opening question, so the topic for today is power dynamics. And in the agenda, there's a list of some questions for reflection and mindfulness about just to start a conversation. Everyone's welcome to add questions if they'd like to. And the opening question that we'll start with before we go into a larger discussion is, where does power come from? If you'd like to share your thoughts, Craig.
Yeah, hi Tam, thank you. So I'm on mobile and I'm driving and I'm finding this, just joining this conversation fascinating, but I'm gonna have to pass. And yeah, oh, yep, bye.
Sure. What about ratio 13? Would you like to share your thoughts?
I want to be simple. I think power is inherited, acquired, given, And it just depends on if it's through moral or ethical means. And I'll pass it to Inti.
Thank you. Well, I think power sort of goes down to value and resources. Like, I think power is what you do with what you have, whether you as an individual or perhaps social networks or whatever. Uh, you have the power you have on certain stuff depends a lot on the value you can add, you can bring, or the resources you have available. And I'll pass it on to uh, Edu. I
Nick?
think Edu has some tag, or you, or yourself.
Yeah, I think Nick is the second to last, and I'll close out after Nick goes.
Okay.
Welcome, Nick.
Hi. I agree with Durgadas in that power is borrowed from others. I mean, just looking, sorry, we can hear my brother in the background, but just looking from my personal experience, you know, like every time I make a decision or take any action or say anything within the TEC on my own, in a way, I'm kind of taking away other people's power to say something about it or make decisions about something. Do you know what I mean? So I think it is borrowed from others, especially if you're part of a collective.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think I missed anyone, so please holler if I'm wrong. And I found these super interesting. I thought a little about it myself, and I see there's different kinds of power as well. I mean, to go back to what Solstice said about the root of the word, that to be able to do things, which sort of corresponds nicely to what Livia said around, like, you have a choice, the power to be able to choose. The choices aren't made for you, which it's like circles around to what Nick and Durgadas are saying, is like, if it's borrowed from other participants. Although that doesn't resonate for me as much. I think that power comes from, like, there's two different ways that I see it categorized now. Is there's power through, like, force, which is basically violence, threat. You know, there's this kind of power. You take power and you force people to do something against their will. Or, like, another kind of force is leverage. So financial incentive or another kind of incentive could be another way of having power over others, like a control. It's kind of power. And then I think that there's this other kind of power, which is a much more a healthy kind of power, and it comes from trust. You know, people who you trust have a certain power with you. People in your family, people that you admire and have come to be able to count on. I think that they acquire a certain, like, power with you. And skills and knowledge as well. I think people that are very skilled in knowledge have a power in a particular domain. You know, I don't think of power as like all, omnipotent everywhere all the time, but more like really focused in certain areas where you can acquire those powers because of the skills or knowledge or trust that you've built. And so how I'm thinking about it right now. Okay, so there's a lot of questions here, and I'd love us to get more focused on the TEC now, actually. If we can talk about where is power exerted in the TEC? Where do you see it exerted? And you can share whether you think it's healthy or unhealthy, or like how it can be improved. Ways people are empowered in the TEC. So how do we empower others to feel the ability to choose, the ability to do things? And then checks and balances in the community, checks and balances the stewards have in place, and any feedback loops. So I'll pass it around. We don't really have a time. We have about a little under 40 minutes left. So I'd like people to really sort of dig into this as they want to. I guess we'll pass it around to, and I'm going to say answer as many or as few of these questions as you feel like you are comfortable doing. And I think I'll love to pass to you, Solsista, to get us started.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I might jump out early. And one question is what also made me come here is the second last questions. What checks and balances do stewards have in place, or do they even need it? Again, since I said in my world, we also how I perceive tech or any of these systems that we're building, these power dynamics, like we have the agency to build and rebuild and improve such that we don't feel a cog in the machine. That's super important. And one thing is that we don't bring about those hierarchical control structures into these new places. And that's why, for me, a steward doesn't that again, like this is the world where I say a steward, you care. Like there is no power or power dynamic. You shouldn't be checked or balanced in a sense. Like you should serve, right? And in service, yeah, ethical. Yeah, I'm a bit thrown off. So that's the question. Like, how did we even get there? Like, what are? It feels like those power dynamics somehow creep into these systems that we are defining our economy by the participants. This is what we are talking about, right? And we are doing that, like literally work over time. That has been all of it. So where do these power dynamics do creep in? And that would be one thing I would love to learn, or if we get to that point sometime. And really, if stewards, then we're just misusing the word. Yeah, if we have really power, legislative or whatever, if we're just playing the same games, then we're just using other words for the same game and same roles. And yeah, we should have produced other things than power dynamics by now. With the intentions we came in, with the vision, mission, values we worked through. So I'm curious. I want to learn why do we even talk about power dynamics? But I acknowledge that we do, and yeah. But for me, it's like two different worlds colliding. So do stewards need checks and balances? And if they would need that, are they stewards? It's just another question I'm just adding.
Okay. Do you want to pass it along?
Yes. Antti?
Well, I think I'll probably pass in this one because you said it was more focused on the TC, and I just don't know enough.
Would you like to choose someone to pass it on to, NT?
Sure. Maybe Juan Bell.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I also think that somehow power is the capacity to participate, and the ability to do the same that others can do. So that's why I bring that into the table. Like we are already working with the gardens, but there's people that have been participating in the project over 6 or 7 months, and they are still like not being able to be included in that phase of managing the commons. So I think it's important, yeah, to try to give a lot of relevance that the reward system is a key piece for the power balance in our organization. And yeah, there are always checks and balances. And um, I also think that power like has a lot of premises, and it all goes also into how much do we question those premises, and how much are we, yeah, sometimes carrying some things without questioning them, because we have seen them in other spheres of our life, and how much are we trying to build things from yeah, from the best of ourselves. Yeah, I think it's also very difficult, but it's a challenge that we all face, um, to be conscient with our communication, and also with our behavior. But yeah, we are all human. And I will pass to Mert.
Thank you. So I wanted to add actually on top of one for something about in what ways people are empowered in TC. Of course, you are empowered by your tokens, your governance power, but also empowerment, I think, will should come from the cultural build as well. For example, we should create a cultural build that appreciates hard work and like leadership within the working group. So, for example, in my experience, like I don't have any voting power, but I feel empowered within TC through time, because I've been participating in my working group. Like people were recognizing that I'm doing something, so they were appreciating me. They were giving me more jobs. So, in a way, the cultural build that is created is also empowering. Just not that governance is the only way to empower somebody. I feel like, or should be like, should. So I would like to pass it to Nate.
Thanks, Mert. So I just want to start out by saying that I don't think power is inherently bad or negative or any of that. You know, if I have power and I exercise that power, I exercise it only because you grant me that power. And in a way, every time I exercise my power, I'm risking that power. And so if we look at it from that perspective, a lot of times power in the natural sense is a form of reputation that is risked every time you make a decision or you put something on the line. And so this is also interesting because it can be deceiving as well, because blind trust in that power is a huge problem that we can't afford to let creep into the culture or any aspect of interpersonal relationships. With all that being said, the TEC has very interesting power dynamics, in my opinion. I think the stewards in particular have both social and functional powers over how things are done. A lot of this, I think, is to blame is because we have centralized tooling. It allows us to be gatekeepers of certain things like the forum or Discord or HubSpot or ZenHub, and this kind of naturally creeps, I think, slowly into the social realm. And this is, I think, what kind of Durgadas was speaking to the other day about the baseline security, where, you know, if we can have a system where we don't have to trust anybody, I think the role of steward would be less perceived with this type of power than it actually is. And so I think these types of structural dynamics that we have in the TEC kind of lend themselves to the perception of more social power and blind trust that should probably not exist. But yeah, those are just my observations so far. But I think it's a very difficult subject, and I don't think it's inherently bad. I just think we have to really focus on how to approach it and be aware of the power that we hold. And I will pass it over.
Can I just ask one question before you pass it?
Yeah.
So I'm just perplexed because the centralized tooling are 3 tools that we use that everyone has access to. So when you say gatekeepers for the forum, for example, how is there a central group gatekeeping forum posts?
You're not technically gatekeeping, but you can limit. You have powers over others that others don't have.
Okay.
And
But everyone could.
is
It's more like maybe it's like someone has the power to delete something, is what you mean? That's
yeah,
like
or
the admin
edit.
Or edit. Okay. Okay.
And you can take the same approach for like Medium or HubSpot, you know.
But then Discord and ZenHub are the other 2 things that are very open to anyone. So in theory, anyone should be able to join our Discord and say most things. But I see what you're saying. There's maybe not access to the orientation data, for example. So there's a different level of access to information for privacy concerns, of course. But okay. All right. If you want to pass on.
Pass it on to Griff.
Thank you. Maybe I need one more person before me to this. I just got a little distracted in real life here. Can I pass it to Livia?
Yeah. I'm really excited about the analysis part of the reward systems because I think this will show. So I think what we're missing, and I was talking to Tim about this whole thing before, and we were thinking like, what are the important questions to raise the points that are actually missing? And I think a feedback loop that we are missing is one that shows all of the contributions that we have, what types of contributions, how they are distributed, what value they received, who is working with who, what are the relationships in the system, and all this we'll be able to see in the analysis dashboard. And that's what I'm focusing most of my time with the reward systems, like thinking how to understand health of the ecosystem, like what are metrics for health. I just had a call today with the Gitcoin crew that is making the Karma app for them. So Gitcoin developed this this reputation system to access health of individuals. So we're trying to understand what makes someone, what is healthy, what is healthy for a person in TEC. How do we know that contributors are healthy and that the ecosystem is healthy and that the relationships that coming from this are healthy? And I'm really excited, actually. I see a bright future for this. Like we're brainstorming a lot of interesting things. We'll probably have a proposal for the TEC soon, and I think we'll be surprised with the level of decentralization that we actually have. And another question that keeps coming to me is, what is blocking democracy? Like, what is making people feel like they can't just go do it, or that they can't propose something to change something they are unhappy about. And Tam said something that stuck with me, that is like, to criticize is way less time consuming and energy consuming, but to propose a solution and to carry on that solution, it takes a lot more effort. So I think I want to share that I think a lot of people are doing this effort a lot more than we imagine. And maybe there is an issue with visibility. Maybe the contributions of the stewards are the ones most visible to everyone. And that's a point where we need to improve, to leverage all the other contributions to a similar level of exposure. And I pass to Zapti.
Thanks, Libby. Yeah, I pretty much agree with what everything said. Only thing, also, like, you can lose power by not doing nothing. Like, not only you need to exercise it to lose it, you can also use, you step away, and then, after time, you're social, you're not so much in the loop, so people can trust you less. And then I wanted to say another thing. Yeah, like, and like right now, just for being on this meeting, like the stewards are being rewarded, and the other people not so much. And I mean, this isn't, like, it's the way we work. Like, we make those proposals in the forum, in the garden, and then we set up the team. I don't know, like, another way, to decentralize, because I feel like, everyone's opinion is the same valuable in this meeting. And yeah, and the stewards are just being rewarded and others not. But yeah, it's the only thing I can share right now. I'll pass it to Griff.
Wait, before you pass,
Okay.
what do you mean the stewards are being rewarded?
Like, I mean, like, just for assisting those calls, and like, one of, the stewards are getting a monthly salary just for being stewards, and taking all the coordination. This call is one of the jobs that the stewards are taking. You don't have to be here, like, to get that compensation, but most you're getting that, right? And like, other people is not getting that, and they also sharing their opinion in this meeting in particular. I'm not saying like they should get, like, the full salary of a steward, but if they're sharing their opinion here, they should also get, we should, like, the value should come more tight and not so broad. So yeah, sharing your thoughts here should value the same, even if you're a steward or you're not.
I think I understand. Thank you.
Cool. I'll snag it. Thanks, Zep. So I'm just going to go back to some of these questions too. I really liked what really everyone's had to say, but especially Olivia's thoughts around reward systems. I feel like we're really missing the reward system, and I wish that we could have. I don't know, having praise, even though it was inefficient and ugly and it was probably better than nothing. And not having being able to continue it, I think has hurt the power distribution in our community. People don't feel like, I feel like there's a huge benefit to the reward system at a psychological level too, of feeling like the praise being like gamified in a way where it's like, oh yes, I am making progress. I feel that I have more power than I had before because my number went up a little bit, and having that number go up mentality feels like you're making progress in the game. And that game, making progress in the game, I think gives you the ability to make more power. Also, like what Zep just said, it's like the people who end up getting salaries to do this work, they have the ability to take more power and have more time to, if power is like work over time, they can put more work in less and more time in, so they can have more power. And then like I think TEC power is exerted a lot in calls and in decisions on GitHub board. I think we do an amazing job at decentralization, honestly, compared to most groups. But we can always do better, of course. Power is exerted in voting with TEC tokens, and I think people are empowered to kind of. I mean, when the reward system's back, I think giving people praise is actually, you know, in many ways giving people power. And I would love to see us create some kind of reputation, like non-transferable token, to be distributed along with the TEC, so that the power is not also, so that reputation is given and not just something that's transferable. Because having impact hours and having the non-transferable like hatch tokens allowed us to do so many cooler things with voting and distributing decision-making power. So I hope that we can bring that back to some extent. Maybe even like connect it to when people buy tokens to the augmented bonding curve, we also issue them a reputation token, but not when they buy it on the market. It's things like this, you know, I think we can be creative. I do think that power and reputation come hand in hand, and that we really should bring in some kind of reputation connection for like, especially to enable feedback loops, you know, and enable people to have a voice and not just be able to buy their power. The being able to buy power is not something that is very exciting. I think that it makes a lot of sense when you're exerting power over a collection of funds. You know, if you're putting money into a pot and one person puts in $20 and one person puts in $1 million, the person with $20 should have much less of a voice. Now, I don't know if it should be 20 to 1 million. I really like quadratic voting for that, you know, that you can, you know, reduce the power distribution and still, in a way, empower people's individual perspective and take that into account as well. But in the end, plutocracy makes a lot of sense when you're governing a pot of funds. It doesn't make sense when you're governing the direction of advancing token engineering. It makes much less sense there. And so we're going to need to find a way to mitigate these dynamics, I think. But I think I really love the conviction voting dynamic and the power through tokens to distribute funds there. And I think I'm excited to see how we can improve that and nail that. But, and yeah, checks and balances on stewards. I think one of the things that we've been missing a lot is these feedback loops. And I think that's on a cultural level, just a great way to grow. I would love to see some kind of like 360 feedback form where, you know, anyone can give feedback on anyone anonymously, and a process for integrating that feedback, and that's fair. I've been dreaming of that for months, but it just never makes the priority list, you know. So I do think that we need checks and balances. Stewards do have power. The power comes from legitimacy, and people listen to stewards over others. So I even think people will eventually we'll spin up the delegation thing in our garden, and that will even bring more checks and balances needed to stewards. I mean, you saw the stuff with Brantley here. It's really interesting. You know, Brantley got kicked out of ENS basically for his Catholic views and his like homophobia views, and very, very like, you know, traditional and I don't know, like old world views, and yet he's still the number one ENS delegate. He's actually still the number one ENS delegate after all that drama. At least he was a couple days ago. And so now they're like, oh wow, I guess maybe it's gas costs, and they're like going to subsidize gas costs. But in the end, especially with crypto stuff, you know, when you accumulate power, it kind of gets stuck in you. You can't even take it away. So I think having some checks and balances built in is something that we should really consider. Yeah. And I don't sorry for that long rant. I'll pass it to Mert. Did you go already, Mert?
Yeah, I have spoken. Let's.
Nick hasn't. If you'd like to share, Nick.
Maybe Nick left.
Oh.
Yes, she left the call.
Oh, okay. Whoops. Ratio.
Yeah, I definitely am not going to take long. Only thing I can say is that it's hard to determine what the power dynamics are unless there's transparency, complete, utter transparency. And that's pretty much all I got. I don't want to take any more time. I haven't been here long enough to really form an opinion. That's just a generalized opinion. I'll pass it on to Durgadas. Thank you.
So, if you start with the premise that social power is borrowed, then the stewardship idea should automatically be one of service. But I think it's important that we understand that there are sort of three sections of things that we need to deal with. One is everybody here has participated in an abusive system forever. And so their general way of dealing with things is being used to being asked by every system they've ever interacted with to give up their power to them so that they can acquire that power from them. So they don't really know what true autonomy, agency, or decentralization is like at all. So all of their behaviors are going to be informed by the abusive system that they've come from. So I think we need to recognize that as a starting point for most people, and that most people are just not going to be comfortable with autonomy or agency or the simple fact of using decentralization as their ground floor. So in order for them to be able to do that, we have to put them through an educational process by which they can actually begin to feel that autonomy and agency, and to feel that, okay, so instead of being anti-centralization, which is, I think, what most people view decentralization as, we get to actually use decentralization as the starting point. I don't think most people actually think or feel that way. So when they participate in these so-called DAOs, what they're actually doing is preferring the semi-centralized bureaucracy ideas instead of actual decentralization. And so I think that has to be educated away. And if I think we're going to call ourselves a DAO, we have to just recognize the fact of that actual need to educate people in that side of the picture, and to appreciate that when we're making decisions that a person's going to be coming from the legacy cultural code base, as I call it, which is centralization, giving up your power, talking your way out of things you behaved your way into, all of this stuff, is all just a part of the previous abusive system. So how is it that we can A, educate people, B, make sure that when we're making decisions, we don't do them performatively? So for example, I have a bunch of specific examples in terms of the way we deal with this in the TEC. So we're like, hey, we don't want to have a technocracy, and yet we aggregate a bunch of different unrelated sets of concerns into a single voting proposition, right? So that's literally, an example of how we just shot ourselves in the foot. So we have a lot of legacy cultural code-based structural issues that are created through these kinds of, unconscious bias, confirmation bias, sunk cost fallacies, all these different kinds of things. And so I just think that we need to inventory that stuff, and do what we can to put in structures that liberate us, or create enabling constraints, versus the perpetually choosing governing constraints, which is the tool of the abusive systems that we came out of. And I will also say that the problem with the steward model is that it works really well if decentralization is your psychological base. Okay, but it doesn't work really well if you came from the legacy cultural code base. And so where you're I've talked to people who were talking about my situation, and some people apologized to me because their habit was to be bystanders rather than to actually inform me that there were things going on. Yeah, there are just people who will just have more social power. And the beautiful thing about the Token Engineering Commons is I think there are a lot of people here who really do a great job trying to give away the power that they have when people try to put it on them. So part of the reason why somebody like Griff is really admirable, or Livy, is because they actually really try hard to deflect the legacy cultural code based stuff that they get from other people. And in that sense, they are really good sort of benevolent dictators, but they really don't want to be those things. And that's a beautiful thing. They still have all this power, but they really do a good job of trying to deflect it. What I'm saying is that we as a culture, I don't think do as good a job at that as some of the people who are, who've founded that. And I'd like to see us put in things like liberating structures to actively, in every single meeting, deflect or disperse that power that they've accumulated by that previous legacy cultural code base, by convincing people that it is okay to give up or outsource all of their governance and power and money and structural stuff. And I just think we need to be really, really clear when we're doing things for convenience or because of our previous thinking versus truly behaving in a decentralized fashion. So I have a million more things to say on this, but I feel like I could go on forever. I have tons of examples and other things, and if you guys want to unpack that with me, we can do that in some other form. But I think I've said enough as a summary. Thank you.
Thanks, Durgadas, and I'd love to hear more about it personally. And well, the next few weeks are going to be quite packed, but hopefully in March, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about it. But Eduardo hasn't had a chance to go yet, so we have 3 minutes left.
Thank you, Tam. I won't take long. For me, I will go straight to the questions. The type of power that we have here, I think we have a token holder power and we have a social construct power, or a cultural related power, where we have assigned probably certain power socially to people. In what places it's power exerted in the TEC, I feel, as Septi mentioned, the Stewards Council or the Stewards, even though it's an open space for everyone to join, not everyone joins, and it happens quite often. And I think as long as we do not structure in a way that people are clearly engaged in these decision-making spaces, then we are actually exercising power unconsciously, probably, and unwillingly, but we are exercising power, and it's not very balanced because we are not open enough so people don't get more involved in that sense. What check and balance does the steward have in place? I think a great idea, and we talk about this with Tam at some point, to give mutual feedback. In my case, for example, the feedback I received from Griff back in the day was really helpful, and I feel this very simple, nothing too complicated approach to things, and in a human level, it's very grounding and it's very helpful to improve. And I think it should be mutual. Like even if you work at Common Stack, even if you are not a steward like this, just pick someone who you work close to and make yourself accountable and make yourself open to receive feedback and improve from that. And the community, which checks and balance, for me, and all the other questions are related to accessibility. It doesn't matter how many power balancing options do we have if the community is not aware that they exist. And I think this is something we could make more of an effort on making sure that people are aware, the community is aware token holders are aware that these things are open. Like if you want to put a proposal to take whatever decision making you think it's better, you have the power to do it if you just do it. So I think accessibility, it's something that it could help the balance power that that is happening here in the TEC. So I will give you the last minute 10 back to you.
Cool. Thanks everyone for sharing that. It was such a great and diverse and different opinions. I really appreciated hearing it. I just maybe will share, 30 seconds because we are at the top of the hour. I think mostly the most important thing is that people are empowered in the TEC. And of all these questions, I think that's the one that's most important to focus on. And I would say, similar to what Durgadas was saying about empowering others, I do look at stewardship as civil servants. I look at our organization in this role as servant leadership, and that's why active and present servant leadership in the know is like it's one of the most important 3 things to be a steward, is that we empower the people around us rather than dictating what the other people around us should do. And I think it's really probably more important for us to have more concrete ways where we can practice that. I'd say I think servant leadership, maybe in my mind, is not the same for everyone else in their minds. And maybe an interesting thing that we could do with the stewardship is to actively practice servant leadership practices. And it's something that I am keeping in my mind to see how we can incorporate that more. I was going to say hard code, but more formally. And we are at the top of the hour.